Welcome back to BeanTube. Today we're in our main field in Elora, and we're going to be looking at what notes we take in the field through the field season. All right, one of the first things that we look at when we're taking notes in the field is our flowering date and flower color. Flowering date, we use the Julienne date. And to pick our flowering date, we use at least 50% of our plot has one flower on it. Because we can't be out here every single day, sometimes we need to predict a little bit ahead or a little bit behind and then check our predictions for flower date. If we need to predict ahead, we can use the size of buds or the abundance of buds. To predict behind, we can look for pin beans or dead flowers. And some other things we look at are flower color, and we look at the standard and the wings, and we make sure that's consistent through our entire plot so that there's no beans that shouldn't be there, and that the whole plot is still consistent. One thing to look at for flower color is the difference between the wings and the standard. So in this case, we have light pink wings and a dark pink standard. Closer to the beginning of the season, we take stand counts to see how full our plots are. To do so, we put a meter stick down and then count how many beans have come up per meter. This is a lot easier earlier in the season when the beans haven't gotten as big. We take notes on the plant height as well, and to do so, we look at our whole plot and find a spot to take a measurement that's representative. To do so, you take your meter stick and put it flat on the ground, making sure it's fully upright, not on an angle or anything like that. And then use the very top of your leaf cover as your measuring point. We also take notes about terminal leaflet size and leaf color. Some examples of leaf color are some of the beans right beside me. So we have a lighter colored leaf and a darker colored leaf. So some example of that is brought close together here. So this leaf here in my right hand is a little bit lighter than this darker leaf. We look at plant type and growth habit as well. And so you can have determinate and indeterminate plots. That depend on whether growth ends in a flower or vegetative growth like a vine. This would be a good example of a determinate plot because the plant growth kind of ends in a flower and there's no additional vines coming up out of the top of the canopy. These are some good examples of our indeterminate plot type. So plant growth ends with vegetative growth instead of a flower like our determinate bushes. This would be a good example of some of our long vined indeterminate plants, as you can see. And then these would be some of our shorter vined indeterminate plants. For indeterminate plants specifically, we measure vine length as well, which is the difference from where the canopy closes over from our beans to the top of our vines. We do a lot of scouting throughout our season, whether we're looking for damage from animals, insects, or common diseases. One common disease that we see a lot of in southwestern Ontario is blight. When we're looking for blight, we're always looking for these brown spots with a nice bright yellow ring around the outside. It's hard to distinguish between common bacterial blight and other types of blight, and so when we're scouting our fields, we're looking for blight in general. We also frequently scout for leafhoppers. Leafhoppers are these little tiny green bugs that you can sometimes find under trifoliates, and they can cause damage to our plants. So when we scout for them, we'll walk randomly throughout our field, flipping usually 50 to 100 leaves total, depending on the size of the field, and count how many trifoliates we've flipped and how many leafhoppers we've found and come up with a ratio. This will help us decide if we need to spray an insecticide or not. Another thing that we look for in our plots is ozone damage. This year there's been a lot of wildfires in northern Ontario, so southern Ontario has had some bad air quality as well as some extreme heat, and our beans can take a hit from ozone damage because of that. A typical characteristic of ozone damage is this bronzing of the leaf. Ozone damage can eventually lead to yellowing and necrosis, as you can see in this plot right here. We also look at harvestability for our plots. When looking at harvestability, we consider how upright the plant is, how close the pods are to the ground, as well as things like lodging. These plots here would be a good harvestability rating because they're a very upright plant and the pods are not directly on the ground. This would be an example of a plant that isn't very good for harvestability. The plant's not very upright, it's kind of laying on its side and binding across the ground, and the pods are going to be closer to the soil. It's a little early yet, but we do take pod notes as well. When we're looking at a bean pod, we look at the length, which is like end to end. We look at the width as well. We look at the beak length, which is this piece at the end. There's no actual bean in that part, and it's a little bit sharp. We look at the curvature of the bean, and we also look for pigmentation. So this bean has no pigmentation, whereas this one has the start of what our cranberry beans look like with some pink stripes in them.